So welcome everybody. My name is Michael Strauss. I'm here as chair of the Rubin Observatory Science Advisory Committee. This is a community-run group that advises the project, both the construction project and the operations. And we have traditionally always held, well, the closest to a face-to-face meeting as we could at the project and community workshop. And that's what this is now. I have just a very few slides before we get into the main topic of the meeting, just to introduce what the Science Advisory Committee is. But as you have seen in all the sessions that we've had thus far, just to remind you of the code of conduct that applies for all the sessions at this meeting. You're all familiar with this now, but the key issues here are to adhere to the principles of kindness, trust, respect, diversity, and inclusion. And needless to say, any discriminatory behavior or any sort of bullying or harassment is outside of this code of conduct and absolutely to be avoided. And as you know, just like all the other presentations at this workshop, this one is being recorded as we speak. There's a Slack channel. I have a slide in just a moment where people can ask questions, and we'll go forward with that. So the Science Advisory Committee, as I said, reports both to the construction project and to operations. And some of the activities that we have done actually were summarized in Bob Blum's operations slides that we heard earlier today. The Science Collaboration Federation Charter, which I guess was formally announced just half an hour ago on Slack as formally approved. That's something that we did. We've reviewed proposals for the community event brokers, something else that we've heard about. We developed the charge for the Survey Cadence Optimization Committee, where we developed or are still developing, almost final touches, the charge for the Users Committee, and giving advice on the plans for early science, which is a topic that we'll be covering in the session that starts in just over an hour. Today, the Science Advisory Committee meeting itself, the focus is on communications between the project and operations on one side and the science community on the other. And in that spirit, the Science Advisory Committee has drafted a series of questions and topics that will be the context of our discussion. We'll see that in just a moment. This is the current membership of the SAC. Last time, while I'm talking, I can't see who all has joined, but I'm hoping a good fraction of these people are now on. I've listed their email addresses as well. The Science Advisory Committee represents the full scientific community of the Rubin Observatory, and in that context should be considered a point of contact for all of us, for everybody, to individuals to reach out to with questions of concern, topics that you think we might stress, anything else that might come up. And again, I am chair of this committee. So for this meeting, this is a meeting of the Science Advisory Committee. The SAC members themselves who are on, what we're going to hear is again a response to a series of questions that the SAC has articulated on the broad subject of communications. SAC members themselves should feel free to either raise their hand in Zoom or just speak up as they see appropriate. For everybody else, of course, this meeting is open to all and everyone is welcome. Please write your questions in the Slack channel for this session, and there is the name of this Slack channel. And if we'll see how it goes. If there's time at the end, of course, we can relax that somewhat and have questions from everybody else by hand raised. The discussion itself will be by Ron Paul, Melissa, and Amanda. And with that, I will stop sharing and ask everybody, ask some combination of Ron Paul, Amanda, or Melissa to share their screen and start the discussion.
Sure, I'll get us started. Thank you, Michael. So you should be seeing my screen. This first slide is just all the questions. I'm going to go straight to the first question that the SAC had for us. It was about how the community engagement team, which is what CET is short for, the outreach team and the communications team interact. So maybe for people who don't know us, I'm Melissa Graham. I work for Rubin at the University of Washington, and I lead the community engagement team for Rubin Observatory. And then maybe Rampal and Amanda just want to introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rampal Gill, for those of you that don't know me, and I lead the communications effort for the construction project based in Tucson, Arizona.
I'm Amanda Bauer, and for purposes of this discussion, mostly I'm the head of the education and public outreach project for construction.
Exactly, cool. Okay, so with respect to this question, how do these teams interact? It's mostly like, how do us three talk together and work together? And so comms and CET, we have a standing bi-weekly meeting where we discuss whatever, like just emergent topics, whatever it is that we're working on. Maybe I'll let Rampal and Amanda say how they interact.
Yeah, so in addition to that bi-weekly meeting that I have with Melissa, in which we talk about anything that's coming up, and I, with the lens of communication on, kind of look to see where we can amplify any of the messaging that they're putting out through their channels, so that maybe a broader community or people who maybe otherwise wouldn't see that messaging would get to see it. And then for comms and EPO, it's similar. Amanda and I, we do meet once every 2 weeks. And importantly, we also have a member on the team that we share. And so that often helps with any cracks in information, and brings to light topics that we maybe are missing or need to pay attention to. And yeah, so that meeting takes bi-weekly, in which we coordinate on many things, and actually already coordinate on operations communication as well in that area.
Yeah, and what I can offer to that is at a high level, we kind of see Rampal as the whole project communications manager. So she really controls the messaging. We're asking people on the project if they've got things that that are coming up, they let her know, and she sort of helps distribute that message across the appropriate channels. The EPO team very specifically is in charge of thinking about communication to the non-specialist audience. So at the moment we're still in construction, so we're just building everything. We're not actually doing that communication yet, but we're starting to slowly ramp up into implementing that communications to public audiences that we will be implementing when we finish our construction project at the end of fiscal year 22 and we start fiscal year 23. And then Melissa and the community engagement team are really focused on the needs of the science community. So they really identify and craft the main messages that the science community needs, and then work with Rampal to make sure that's distributed across all the appropriate channels.
So do we, I'm just going to jump in with a question. And again, I urge members of the SAC to similarly jump in either by raising your hand or just speaking up. Do you imagine that this relationship and sort of the way these things will work will change as we head into full operations? I mean, the whole project, of course, is making that transition from construction, excuse me, to operations. And the CET, for example, is a relatively new body in this regard. How do you see this evolving going forward?
I can try and take a stab at that to start with. So there will be more parties involved in this going into operations. And so we realize that there is work to be done to align communication with both CEE, Communications, Education and Engagement team that is within WALAB. But then there is also the communications team at SLAC, and going into operations with both of those parties being at 50-50, there's going to be some communication there that's going to need to be aligned. And we're going to have to work out really what those look like. We're starting already. I already do communicate with the people on the CE in CEE at Noir Lab and align a lot of messaging. A lot of things are already amplified through their channels and mechanisms that they have in place. So I'll let Amanda or Melissa add anything more.
Yeah, I can add that as we go forward towards operations, the communications team is helping the CET a lot with starting to interface with other teams within Noir Lab, like the ones that Rand-Paul just mentioned, because we have sort of overlapping goals and in some cases like overlapping things that we do. So we start to work with them that way. And then the other big change that's coming towards operations is that the CET and EPO will start working together a lot more as the CET adds some citizen science staff members to its team, and they were going to be working directly with EPO as well. So we'll have, once that kind of gets going, we'll have a lot more direct contact, I think. It's the plan.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
The only other thing I'll offer is that the EPO team at the end of fiscal year 22 then moves within Noir Lab and the CEE team. And so that's a big transition for the EPO team. And we are in the process of working out a lot of those details of that transition. We're kind of slowly working through that the transition details now so that we're ready to go when we hit fiscal year 23.
Okay, let me ask one more question. Maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of this, which is how does, I mean, much of everything that you're describing is very US centric or perhaps, dare I say, Tucson centric. How does one imagine the communication? Well, what challenges, if any, are there in sort of communicating to the larger Rubin community outside of the US, both in Chile and more broadly across the world, especially now that we have all the international in-kind contributions that we heard about from Bob earlier today?
So I can give you an example of, we have a lot of Chileans from the community in the various mailing lists that we have. So even for this meeting, they would be on the mailing list. Now, when Melissa went through the delegates process for DP0, I think we collected a lot more details of the members in the community that are Chilean. And so we were able to add those. So I think that the Chilean communication to the Chilean community is probably one of the strongest. I also utilize members of both the SAC and the Aura Management Council for Rubin. I know that there are seats there that are filled by Chileans, and I usually try to make sure that they're on any communication or helping to distribute the communication, or Mario Humui, who is based down in Aura, also, on the chain to try and help us to amplify and communicate out to the community. And I think when I was talking about aligning with Noir Lab and with Slack, I do try to align very often with IN2P3 as well. And so that is, obviously that's only France and only IN2P3. But so I think that helps to get into the French community somewhat. I don't know if I'm missing anything. I know that I don't have contacts with, all of the in-kinds, all the countries that they come from, and all the other places where the communities are. So to some degree, we really are relying on the community to spread the word. Mm-hmm. And so really the effort is to communicate on as many channels as possible so that as many people see the word and are able to spread the word. I'll let Melissa and Amanda add anything more.
I guess I could add that in terms of communicating outside the US and with Data Preview 0 in particular, it's actually sometimes a bit easier to reach those communities because they're sort of smaller and better contained. So when we wanted to advertise directly to Chileans to participate in Data Preview 0, that can be relatively more straightforward because we know who the people are to contact there. We know the email lists to go on for the Chilean communities. And then for the in-kind teams, there also, it's like a named list of people that we can go right to. So we have that list, and we have Phil helping us when we do need to contact those communities. So in some ways, it's getting broad distribution within the US that can be more difficult in trying to reach like all the astronomers that are working on other things.
There's a question from Charles, and then I suggest we go on, which is he's asking, when is it that EPO will become fully integrated into Noir Lab? And he asked, isn't that currently the case, that it's integrated?
Functionally, it is not integrated right now. So the education and public outreach team for Rubin construction is a separate agreement with the agencies. So it is funded currently to do the constructing of the system, the EPO system that will launch when we move into operations. We are scheduled to finish our construction project at the end of fiscal year 22, so at the end of September next year. And at that time, the whole team, all the personnel will move into Noir Lab CEE team functionally, and we will deliver and launch the operations program that we've been spending the last few years building, but housed within Noir Lab CEE team. There's a lot of interaction and work that we do and coordination with CEE that we do now, and we're building the transition plan for when we are all functionally inside of the same team. But right now we are two separate entities.
Okay, good. Any other questions from the SAC or on this before we go on to the next item? If not, why don't we go ahead and do that?
Right. So the next one is about polls, and the SAC has said that they recommend that the project repeat the poll carried out earlier about how people in the Rubin community get their information in practice. So I think this is mostly a Rand Paul question.
Yeah, so it is right that we have not carried out a survey, I think since 2018 or 17, I can't remember exactly now. I think it's a good idea to do one again, and I would like to, especially since CET has come on board and more channels, especially community, has started being used. And so I think it's a good point at which to do that kind of poll to see what feedback we get on what areas we need to improve on. And then I think DP0 is going to get a separate survey. We might want to think about how we could streamline that so that people aren't getting two surveys and answering the same questions in both of them.
Yes. Meg, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I might be jumping the gun a little. But thinking about this and the information from the past poll, there was a lot, if I remember Rand Paul correctly, that it was that most people are getting their information from the Science Collaboration Chair emails. I was just wondering what do you think has worked well in trying to combat that, to get information out broadly from Rubin itself, and what things might be a struggle that you're sort of already targeting, that you kind of know what that poll is going to say in some sense. Can you talk a little bit about those two sides?
So I think it might be on another slide what the results were and where we decided to put our effort based on the results we got from that survey. And one of the areas was the for scientists area, which we did try to improve. And I think it's about time to poll to see if we, anywhere near hit the mark on getting that area to a point where it's more useful than it ever used to be before. But I think in general, the putting the messages out across more channels, knowing that different people communicate in different ways and use, their favorite channel, whatever that might be. So trying to just make sure that the information is everywhere so that they can pick it up. But I know I'm not really answering your question very well, Meg. I think it's because the answer will have to come through another poll. We did what we thought was right according to the previous poll results. And I think we need to take the poll again and then reevaluate where it is that we need to put our effort. And based on what we did last time, did it work? Did it not work? Why didn't it work? If it didn't, and things like that.
I guess a sort of a context of these polls and asking where people get the information is A, are people getting the correct information, or are they getting conflicting information from different sources? And B, are they getting all the information that they need? Those two things are closely related. Getting information out is always a challenge for a large collaboration, as we've discussed before. And this is, I think an updated poll will definitely be very useful. I mean, the world has changed rather dramatically in many ways since 2017. Both a good thing and a bad thing is that there's an increasing proliferation of methods that people can get news or may get news, and now we're all in Zoom world, and so it's changed yet again. So that will be a challenge going forward. I guess another general comment I'll make at this point, and I suspect it'll come up in the discussion a little bit later, is the extent to which, well, we're talking very much about information flowing from the project to the community, but of course, there's also communication among the members of the scientific community, how they're in touch with each other, and the ways in which information can flow from the community back to the project in a large number of different ways. So, I mean, I think part of all of this, one of the things that we can think about is sort of the most effective ways for people to express people in the community to express concerns, ask questions, and be more than just passive recipients of news and information. I wonder if other members of the the Science Advisory Committee or anybody else would like to have.
Looks like Meg had a follow-up question.
Thanks. Actually, I had a follow-up question to exactly what Michael's raising. So I think one thing to really keep in mind is a lot of this is focused on, and I think the poll was too, as information in the immediate, right? So a newsletter, a tweet, right, a Slack post. And there's two types of information, which is, I want to know about this thing now, but also I want to go back later, or I'm new and I didn't get those 18 emails you sent 6 months ago because I wasn't involved with Rubin. How do I easily find that information? And so I would really advocate making sure to tweak the polls a little bit, or think about added questions to think about what content needs to be in permanent places and how easily that is to find, and that balance between community and the other channels. Because I totally get that, you're right, that different information needs to flow in different places, but also that how do we get people who are new, who didn't get any of those previous messages, or we're so flooded with so many emails and messages, we read it for a second, but if I want to come back and learn about that the new rebaseline 2, where am I going to find that and be reminded of exactly what that means and what late start and the early start and late start actually mean, right? To have a better context, and so I don't misunderstand. And so it'd be great if this new poll can definitely make sure to account for that.
Okay. Yeah, these are challenges. Shall we move on to the next bullet item?
Oh, yes. The next question was pretty much just a request for a one-page guide describing how and when to use all our different communications. And basically between comms and CET, that would be a good addition to, for example, the 4 Scientists webpage or something like that. So I think we'll just take that as an action item.
And I think this might actually help some of what Meg was just saying. If a new person comes on board and they have this, at least they know where to start looking for the information, where that these permanent types of information are, and looking back through however many months to get a picture for what's there. And then, if the answer's not there, then they know they need to ask somebody where can I find XYZ?
Yep. And yeah, I mean, again, this is communication. I mean, the various items that are listed here include not just the one communication of information from the project to the community, but discussions within the community. I mean, community.lsst.org is a good one, and ways for people to bring their thoughts back to the project in a variety of ways. Okay, any other thoughts on this one?
I think it is
Hans.
actually, sorry,
I'm sorry.
I think
Sorry.
it's a very fine balance between all of the channels, because we do hear from people that there are too many channels, and
Yes.
that then they don't know where they saw something or where to look for the information. But like I said, different people go to different places for their information, and they have their preference. And so it's kind of, it's very difficult to balance and say, okay, we're not going to use that channel anymore because we've been told we have too many channels, so we have to cut one, but then we're going to disappoint some people. So I don't know if you have any insight into something like this, or any suggestions, or is something you've seen work fantastic at on another project. We're all ears. What we're trying to do is disseminate the information across as many channels as possible so that people do see the information. But I realize that for some people, then it's too many communications places.
Yeah, I mean, the question is whether if you're not connected in this particular way, you miss something important. Franz and then Meg.
Right. So one thing is maybe to gauge how many people actually consume the information from each of these channels, and maybe also consume it in a way that is maybe useful for them. I don't know if you take the temperature of the community every once in a while and say, hey, give us feedback on that. Maybe that will help you redirect your resources. And I had an extra question, which now I completely forgot.
Okay.
Yeah.
When it comes back to you,
Sure.
you'll have a chance. Meg.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the fine balance. One thing I think is understanding the use cases. So one thing that worries me is community. I think
sorry,
community
by which you mean community.lsst.
Community.lsst.org.
Yeah.
I think community.lsst.org is a really great resource for asking questions and having live discussion. What I fear it's not good at is, let me find something that was repeated, or something that's has announcements in it that are now 8 pages down because there's been lots of chatter since then. So if you're new, you don't know how to navigate that. And then, and so I think trying to find that balance. For example, I think that's where the website could have a lot of power, because it could either link to those specific places on community, or again, it gives you a starting point to then point to community to be able to discuss that. But I sometimes wonder, I think sometimes lots of announcements go out on community that sometimes don't necessarily go out in other forms because there's an expectation people are reading it. And I think there's a learning curve that because there's so much jargon and things of community, it may be putting users off. I'm finding in my science collaboration, I tend to be the one that point people to those community posts. And so it might be something to think about how community's role, how the website role goes in with those other communication tools. And maybe it's just echoing the same thing from the website, right? In all those places that there's a permanent home or always a permanent link somewhere on the Rubin website to these other things. And then, the other ways to think about it. But it's just something I've noticed is that balance. Maybe it's thinking about how we use the balance of community versus the website versus the other things in that discussion. Because I worry that's the thing with forums, right? Is that it's the top things that are there. And so in some of the conversations or posts that I saw coming through in the past few weeks were asking people to give feedback or submit questions for the workshop. And I'm not sure how many people saw those, because you had to be looking at community every day because there'd be a bunch of other posts and then you would see it move on. And I don't know the right solution to that or the right balance, but maybe that's one avenue of trying to help sort this.
Yeah, and we will have an additional alignment to do when we go into operations, where most of for scientists, content will then, we don't have this 100% yet, but will potentially all be on a NOIRLab website, which is specifically for scientists. And we'll have to align there as well to have, you know, either duplicated information or the permanent information that Meg's talking about. So we have to work out that still.
Fed.
Yeah, I think I very much hear you about the fact that people complain about too many sources of information. And I think community is suffering from the fact that it came in third and it's having a hard time being embraced by people that have already switched from email to Slack for Rubin and don't want to switch yet again. But a lot of these platforms can be integrated effectively. And maybe it would help if the integration, if there was support for people that want to integrate community with their email or Slack with their email, which is not super trivial. And also, if you want to maintain all the platform and send the announcement to all the platform, then it becomes really important that you have the integration on your end, so you can do that seamlessly, so that you don't forget one of the platform or don't send inconsistent messaging. So do you have enough resources for that? That was all of the question.
I don't know if anyone is in a position to try to respond to that. Yeah, and of course, you know, it may be that in, you know, 2 years hence, when we're really ramping up to full operations, this, you know, there will be some other platform whose name I don't know yet, that will be what everybody uses. I don't know, you know, what the half-life of these various communication tools is, but at least for this older astronomer, it sure feels awfully short. So, okay, unless Fed, did you have something else, or? No. Okay, let's move on.
Right, the next question, are there plans for updating, revamping lsst.org website and on what time scale? And I'll just mention too, just to address quickly the things that Meg was saying before about the difference between what information you put in community and what goes on the website. That is definitely something, right now the lsst.org /for-scientists site, it's not that easy to update, and we're trying to migrate it to be under NOIRLab as well. But in the future, there would be things like long-standing initiatives and activities like Data Preview 0, that kind of thing would show up on the website. So you wouldn't have to be in community all the time to be getting that information. So just the point that the plan is not to have essential information only in community. That's definitely not the plan. But I definitely get that it seems like that's the case right now sometimes. So I think for lsst.org, looks like the first couple points are EPO. Amanda?
Yep, I'm happy to take that. So the question is, are there plans for updating, revamping lsst.org, the website? I think the main update that had happened to it was as Rampal responded in response to the previous poll, there was some need for updating the for-scientists information, and that was done. And so for moving to the future, what the EPO team has been doing is developing a new public-facing website that's planned to go live at the end of our EPO construction effort, which is the end of September 2022. So we'll be launching that new website there. This website does have a kind of for scientists section that will be linking out to community or noirlab.edu/science, or, you know, the main pieces of information where scientists should go to do the science. But the core point of that public facing website is for non-scientists, and it's to highlight all of the activities that we've been developing for non-scientists, all the kind of Rubin background information and exciting things, and why it's this fabulous new instrument for astronomy. That said, lsst.org will remain live until the end of the construction project, but it won't be updated with new public information. So that the core public information that needs to be communicated starting October 2022 will go on the new public website that the EPO team will be leading. I'm just reading through these bullet points to make sure I said everything.
So I am now confused. For once we're in full operations, is the main website that a professional scientist will use will be this EPO developed website?
So I think that if you are a scientist and you need to know critical details for how you get onto the science platform and do that work, public facing site is going to be the place where you start to go to other places to find those details for science, for how you do science. And how you do the science is what Melissa's team is generating that information. Okay, so that is, we should think of that as a separate website from this EPO developed public facing website? At the moment, that's the plan. I mean, let's be clear that we're still a few years out from full operation. So at the moment, this is the structure that we're working with. I can just say on behalf of all of us that we really do appreciate this feedback as we're transitioning into how best to communicate all of these things. Melissa, did you want to comment on that at all?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. And I mentioned before that for scientist stuff goes under NOIR in operations. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to, well, I imagine everyone on this call, but particularly the SAC to understand a little bit in a bit more detail what that will actually look like. So we should imagine that lsst.org itself will disappear soon after full operation start, or become at least static at that point.
Yes, one of those two.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Meg?
So I want to reiterate a concern I have that I sort of see from my perspective, which is Rubin has such a huge learning curve because we have so many acronyms. What is the SCOC? What is DP0? What is DR1? What are all these things, right? And so what I find is that getting people up to speed is very, very hard, and that having a good website helps with that. And I think what I find continually lacking on the website is it's very hard on the For Scientists page to get a really quick overview of understanding what are the data products and what I might be getting. And especially because as construction's delayed, we're going to get new crops of graduate students becoming postdocs, right? That are now going to be starting to that learning curve. And so I understand that there's limitations to what can be updated on the website, but sometimes I find it hard to be able to find the SCOC page, the links to all the white papers, the cadence white papers, the cadence notes. And even if there's ways to maybe think about how improving the linking on that, I understand they might not be able to do work on it, but I think thinking about how we might make those resources easier would be helpful. And also I want to highlight something that Mario Jurich made that has been incredibly useful in the solar system science community is he made a one-page summary of what are the solar system data products. And I found that that's been really useful in the solar system science collaboration of new people can look at this and without knowing about what the data products definition document is, because it's scary if it's the first time you've seen that, because it's huge number of pages, you get an understanding of it. And so I would recommend maybe thinking about, are there other ways that we could create some of these like one sheets that like tells you like what's the difference between that there's data releases, prompt data products, and the alert stream, right? Even something like that would be really useful, I think. And so maybe there's ways we can get around this without changing the website. Maybe it's more of these infographics or things that can help us get new people who are deciding whether they're going to dive in, get over that first step of that. This is such a huge learning curve. I'm never going to know what all these data products and tables are to even think about joining DP0 preview because I have no idea what's going on. And so it's just one of those things I see coming up is that science collaborations are making websites and content to try to help that, but maybe there's ways that we can the project or operations or again, the community engagement team and communications can come up with some ways around some of these struggles of the website. So maybe more of these infographic sheets, but I can really attest that the one that Mario made has been really, really, really helpful, because without having to explain the different data products, right, in detail in those tables, people already got that, hey, this already got an overview to then to start getting more involved. So I just wanted to highlight a success from as well, right, that's been really great. And so maybe there's ways we can there can be more of those if there can't be changes to lsst.org in the near future.
Meg, can I just ask you a quick question? Have you ever used the search function on the website?
Yes.
And
I don't find it very helpful.
So it doesn't find the stuff that you are looking for?
No, I find Google does. I found Google's been more helpful. I've put a lot of content, like whenever I find something or someone gives a talk, I ask to save a slide and I put that on the Solar Science Collaboration website. But I've found the Rubin website a little hard, or some things in places that I wouldn't have expected. For example, I knew that the construction schedule was somewhere online, but I was looking in the wrong place. It was under About and not for scientists. So it's like trying to find that has been a little hard.
Okay,
and I know some of the information's there, and I totally get that websites aren't necessarily easy to update.
So I just want to clarify that I'm talking about the actual search bar where you can type in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say is, I know what words to search. Not sometimes other people don't, because they don't know what the data products definition document is, right? So how do you search for, or survey cadence, right? Sometimes they don't know the words to search, which is the feedback I've gotten is the same thing with community. I don't know what to search because I don't know the terms yet. So like, how do you understand the alert stream? It's sort of right now, it's the top, basically they're learning from slides or talks. And so I'm just wondering is maybe infographics like that can be helpful, right? Where it's a one sheet of like, what's the alert stream? What are the brokers that'll be available, right? And that's ways to get some of that knowledge, like terminology, to then be able to use the search features.
Clear,
Okay.
Meg. The alert brokers have just been decided. So they are just now writing up documentation on that, the data management team.
Yeah. And I think it's just a balance of documentation and like being able to learn, right? So the data product definitions document is really great, but it's so many pages. And so to dive in is really hard if you have no idea what the alert stream is, right? Or how, like what broadly happens, right? And so having that broad overview of like, oh, there's image subtraction helps you then understand those bigger documents.
Let me just ask a question that appeared on Slack, which is to ask whether the new website will have the name Rubin in it, I mean, one of the many reasons to keep the LSST acronym was that we didn't have to change the website. On the other hand, if we're making a new website, we do have the opportunity to rename things.
Are you speaking explicitly about the URL?
Yes. I think that's I'm reading a question from Manu Gongler on Slack, but I think that's the spirit of that question.
At the moment, we do plan to have rubinobservatory.org as the URL name, modulo a few conversations that we still have to have from all of the supporters and stakeholders and contributors to the project.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still some politics to be worked out, but that is our intention.
Okay. Politics.
Just for you to know, Michael, we do own it already.
Okay. Okay, good. Ansa.
Yeah, so kind of why do I have what the actually URL name is? There is also VRO as kind of the acronym, rubinobservatory.org, that is being used now, has just basically some static hello page. I mean, are we going to have proliferation on this website, or are we going to redirect to one new website? Or what is the plan there?
I would say most likely it's going to be redirected to the rubinobservatory.org if that's the one that we end up being allowed to use.
Okay, I think.
Yeah.
Just to emphasize again, Ajay, that VRO as an acronym is discouraged officially by all aspects of the project. So we really would hope that the community would stop using it.
Yes, I agree, but it's the first hit in the Google search, right? If you Google Rubin Observatory, VRO.org is the first that appears. So maybe you can just retire it. I don't know. And I'm aware that you are discouraging it. Yes.
Okay, I suggest we go on. So I suspect we've covered some of these issues already, but maybe you can go ahead and talk to these points here.
So the sixth question you gave us was about tackling the learning curve, which also just came up. So there's still a very steep learning curve in understanding what Rubin Observatory will provide and how to get involved. So what are we doing to try and tackle this? And I think from the community engagement team perspective, it's really this sequence of data previews has been designed to guide and support our future LSST scientists as they mount this steep learning curve. So the data previews, they ramp up from a very limited set of simulated data to bigger sets of real commissioning data. So that's going to help people sort of ramp up over time and mount this learning curve. And then also we are increasing from like hundreds of users up to thousands of users, active and engaged users. So hopefully as some of them start to mount this steep learning curve now, they'll be able to help each other out sort of along the way. So we really have this process designed so that the community can, help each other learn how to use Rubin, and also to give us lots of time to, of course, test and refine our engagement model and all of the support resources that we have and all the educational materials that people use in order to learn how to do what it is they want to do with the data products that we'll make. So yeah, maybe I'll stop talking there and sort of let the SAC sort of ask more detailed questions about this.
So how it will be, so in practice, I mean, the first group of people with access to data previews is just getting started, and so I imagine you don't yet have information on how that's working, although I hear anecdotally that there's lots of energy and enthusiasm there. It is certainly an interesting test case, not only for exercising the science platforms and getting the community familiar with that, but also seeing how they communicate and get their information and communicate with each other, ask questions, and so on. And so I imagine, as we were talking about the question of asking a poll, one of the questions on which to filter will be, are you one of the people with access to the data previews, and do you feel that you're getting the information that you need, and so on. Do you have any? Is it too early to ask the question of how communication with the folks with data preview access is working, or is that something we should put off until a little later to ask that question?
No, I mean, we can see right away. We took a very diverse approach. So we have set documentation. People can come in, just read the docs. People can just sort of come in, open up the science platform and just start poking around. They can start opening files. So we do have tutorials in there that they can just start. So people who just want to grab something and get going, they do that. We have sort of multiple ways for people to get support. Community is one. GitHub issues is another. It's more for like specific bug reports that go to the RSP team. We were concerned a little at first that there would be too many different ways to get support, because we also have like live sessions, drop-in sessions where people can come and just ask us questions. But what we've been seeing so far is that people are really making use of all of the resources that we've given them. They're showing up to the live sessions, they're submitting GitHub issues, they're using communities. So they're using the tutorials, they're reading the documentation. So yeah, so far it's pretty good. And we'll have our first poll coming up next. I think we're going to release it in September, and it's going to ask them about like how often did they use the various resources? Were they what they expected? Are they satisfied with all the various things? So so far, just looking at what people are doing, I think it's good feedback, but we'll get more specific next month.
Okay, Steve Smart.
Yeah, just Melissa, and looking forward to DP 0.2, which I heard today. I think there's going to be some forced photometry values in the catalog there. I think maybe to preempt some questions you'll get, a lot of people don't appreciate, a lot of users, particularly new users, don't appreciate the difference between forced photometry and standard photometry. You know, when you detect an object at greater than 5 sigma, and then you go and force your measurement below that, either in time series or across other filters. And a lot of users don't get the difference there. It might be a good idea to write a document on what forced photometry actually means. You know, what the difference is between the fluxes. You know, when you force photometry, the flux and the error are real. Obviously, you convert the magnitudes, they can be way off, particularly if they're negative. So I think a short document for users would be good. I'd actually be happy to help you out write that, because I get a lot of questions on it and I keep repeating myself and telling people the same thing. So to preempt, I think a lot of questions you will get in 0.2 and beyond, of course, when you release forced photometry catalogs, a short document explaining what that is would be useful, particularly for new users and new students, because they do struggle with it.
That's really good to know, because we do have 4 sources now in DP 0.1, and they're quite simply documented as this is the force source table, it's forced photometry. So yeah, anything like that where you can anticipate pitfalls or people how they accidentally misuse that data product, that will help us prepare later. Absolutely.
So can you remind us, for the current users of the data previews, it's, as I understand from the selection process, it was meant to be a fairly diverse group, and diverse in the sense of a variety of backgrounds or experiences with being in the Rubin Observatory world and knowing all the jargon and all the lingo. Is that correct?
Oh yes, that's very correct. We very much prioritize getting people from several different kinds of groups, experience with Rubin, experience with platforms, and then very like self-appointed novices, people who were and were not members of science collaborations, students. Yeah, we diversified as much as we could and really boosted participation from groups with smaller populations. Yeah. Okay, good. And I mean, it will be interesting to somehow in the various polls measure, sort of as it were, cut on or understand how people's ability to explore all of this is correlated or not with their past experience and other such things. Yes, that's a good point. We're writing our next poll right now, actually, and how to ask people like the type of institute that they're from or their general career stage, how to ask questions that get us the details of that. I wonder if it would be useful, just thinking out loud for this, for you to share the poll with the SAC for comments before you send it out. That's something we might be able to do, if it would be useful to just get an independent set of eyes on it. Yeah, I will absolutely ask our poll developer to share that with you before it goes out. Okay, that would be great. Good. Okay. Good. I think there is one more of these questions. I don't know if there's a lot on this page, but I think you've covered it all, if I'm not mistaken. More or less. There's more questions specific to learning curve. Stephen, you still have your hand up, but that might be residual. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right, the next one is about community.lsst.org, which has sort of already come up, and we already addressed it a little bit, with the main points being that it's good for discussions and timely information and for support, for lots of back and forth for an interface, but it can be a challenge to use or to find things, or if you're just sort of a casual user and you just sort of show up at the homepage and see what's going on, you can miss things, of course, because you just see like the chronological posts. So some of the points that I wanted to make about community is that information like is not and will not be only in community.lsst.org. It's never the only place that something is posted. And furthermore, it's part of the community engagement team's mandate to monitor what people are talking about and the problems that come up, and really try to identify like when that person didn't know that thing and they're asking about it, should it be in the documentation? And we take action to update our documentation. And this is something that happens very regularly with DP0 already, is the questions that people are asking. We're like, oh, we didn't, give you that particular instruction for that particular use case. And so we go and we update our DP0 documentation to respond to that as well. So, yes, maybe I'll just sort of stop there because you can read the other minor points and just see if anyone wants to raise other community related issues.
Yeah, I guess the question is how we should imagine this going forward. Meg.
I guess I wanted to ask about usage. I guess you already have the stats. And so I guess something I would love to see is how many people actually use it, how many people are going to it, how many unique IPs go to it, and is there a lack of the community using it, which I don't know because I don't know the reads, but I find that I'm the only one raising things that I've seen on there. Like the DM, like I noticed DM has a monthly update there, which I read, and I enjoy learning new things about the solar system processing pipelines from reading those. But I don't know if anyone else knows that they're there. So I copy tidbits and send it out in newsletter to the Solar System Science Collaboration. And so I'm wondering if you can get those kind of stats, and that might again help to think about, are there ways you can help promote community, or, again, tweak things based on what you're seeing of, are there, is there lots of people there, but they're not logging in. And so there's something about not joining conversations, but watching them, or, vice versa. And so I'm wondering how easy it would potentially get that information.
Yeah, that information is quite easy. If you're an admin in the community forum, which I am one of the admins, I can easily see basically dashboard pages to see how often people are using it. What the CET has not quite ramped up yet is using that information. We've been very DP0 focused for the last couple of months. And we did actually look at a lot of that kind of information when we did our overhaul for community. Maybe like half a year ago, when we were changing up like how groups are done, doing like a general cleanup, making the new banner, doing all of that kind of stuff. It's something we're going to come back to. Looking at our user stats. It is there, so we can get the data, and we will come back to looking at it soon. And so it is something the SAC could request in the future if they wanted to, was seeing some kind of report on user statistics from community. That should be something within our capability to provide.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour, and there's only a brief 15-minute break until the next session. I did want to advertise, well, there's a variety of things to go to 15 minutes from now, but among them is a discussion of early science, which is a topic that the Science Advisory Committee has been very interested in. So I encourage people to go to that. We're out of time. I will just read out a post to Slack from Darren Norman, suggesting that one can also bring in a sociologist, and Dara, it looks like you're naming a specific individual who can help with these polls and sort of understand how best to get that information.
I'm actually pointing out that we already are working with that person.
Oh, we are doing. Oh, you're not suggesting, but we are doing. Oh, excellent. Good. Okay, thank you so much. Good news indeed. Okay. Again, this is the end of the time. We got through the 7 items that we wanted to do. This will be an ongoing conversation, as communications by their very nature are. Thank you. Certainly, thank you so much to Ranpal and Melissa and Amanda, and to everybody for your input. The Slack channel is open, so one can continue the conversation there. And with that, I think we will close the session.
Oh, Michael, I'm gonna upload a PDF of the slides.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
There was a
You
request.
you did send me the link as well.
Yeah,
And the
I'll-
recording, can I have access to the recording? Well, on what time scale might I get access to the recording of this directly?
Since they just go to the cloud, the
Yeah.
comms team has been updating and linking back to the session web pages with the recordings like same day.
Excellent, perfect. Okay, because I was madly scribbling notes, but missed all kinds of stuff. So anyway, thank you so much, Melissa. This was really very, very useful indeed.
Yeah, this is good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And lots of topics for further discussion, as is the nature of these things.
So much to do.
Yes, of
so
course.
much to do.
Okay. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye.